It's a guy that was in the startup field at the age of 13, and he's going to motivate you with a talk. Don't be a F star 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 ing entrepreneur. Wantrepreneur. Vitaly, please come on stage.
All right, thanks.
Do it.
Wilderness, are you ready to rock? Yes? I'm here to wake you up a little bit. I hope I succeed. I'll mostly have to wake myself up first. So you guys know what this video is? Anybody? Wannabe? So what is a wantrepreneur? We're going to talk about that today. Don't be a wantrepreneur. Don't be a fucking wantrepreneur. That's my message to you. So who am I? Why am I talking to you today? What can I share with you? I did start in startups at the age of 13. That was a little while ago. And I've been involved with startups my entire career since then. I think I've worked for a big company for about a week in my entire career. Didn't like it. And for the last couple of years, I've been running a company called Keen. And you'll see a new product announcement from us in a couple of weeks on TechCrunch. And I spend a lot of my time mentoring startups all over the world, mostly Europe, through a bunch of different accelerators. So I'm here to inspire you. I hope you enjoy my slides. I'm a designer, by the way, as a profession. So another thing that I'll tell you about that you'll see a lot about very soon is a new venture fund that we're starting called CCC. And you can go to cccStartups.com, follow on Twitter, CCC Startups. You'll see a lot of events all over Europe and a lot of interesting things we'll be doing next year. So with that, let's dive in. The difference between corporate people and startup people, okay? So a lot of your students, you are choosing your career path, and startups are really exciting and hot right now, right? So how many of you are looking to go into startups or already working in startups? That's it? Okay, what are the rest of you doing here? Just hanging out? Nothing else to do on Sunday morning? All right, well, let's take a look at the difference between corporate people and startup people. So corporate people are usually experts in one area, right? They spend years climbing the ladder. They have a stable lifestyle that they have to support, right? Stability. They have real responsibilities. They might have a family, a house, kids. And they need life balance, right? Totally imaginary, by the way. Now, startup people are completely different. They're generalists. They're usually pretty good at a lot of different things. You have to be when you start something from scratch. You don't have any systems in place. You don't have any help. They start early, right? I started at 13. That's not typical, but at least in college. Most people get started in college. They have a very cheap lifestyle because they start early. They're not spoiled yet with a real career and everything that comes with it. And they have nothing to lose, right? Nothing else matters but their startup. That's it. That's their life. 24/7, the same thing, very focused. So that's a big difference between corporate and startup people. That's why for people that have gotten used to the big company lifestyle and work style, it's very difficult to make the switch later. Some of you may know this, right? So you really have to know your shit when you start a startup, right? Some of you were in my pitching workshop yesterday morning, and we went through this a little bit. So some things will be familiar. But what is a startup? What is a startup? Anybody know what a startup is? Can you define what a startup is? Well, it's not a small version of a big company, right? It's an experiment in search of a business model. If you don't know who Steve Blank is, I recommend you find out and read up on it. A startup is an experiment. Think about that. Most experiments fail. Most startups fail. But what you're trying to do is difficult. And if you do succeed, the payoff is big. Right? It's not a coffee shop. So a scalable startup is something that you create. Right? As soon as you get what's called product market fit, as soon as you find a customer that's willing to pay you and you understand how you're going to get them to sign up or get them to buy your product and who that customer is, you get into a transition period. This is where your startup, your experiment, you start building systems around this process, this product, these customers, and then it starts transitioning to become a company, right? And by the time you get to this transition, you get through it, your company is going to be made up of a completely different group of people, right? The people that start out are completely different usually than the ones that end up running the company, where it's about 150 people. That's usually when entrepreneurs get bored because there's nothing new, nothing crazy to do anymore, and they want to leave and do it again, right? Very few end up sticking it out. You know, the Zuckerbergs, the Bill Gates, everybody else that run companies for decades, very few do that. Because usually somebody is either good at companies at scale or they're good at starting them. So Dave McClure, everybody know who Dave McClure is? He's Marvin's boss. Marvin's right here. He'll be talking to you next. A startup company is confused about its product, who its customers are, and how to make money. That's a startup. If a company has 700 employees and it's making a lot of money, it's not really a startup anymore, right? And I like to say that the default state of a startup is failure, and your job is to unfail it. Think about that. If you do nothing, nothing's going to happen, right? So you have to do everything you can to unfail it. Now, why would you want to start a company? Why would you want to start a startup? Is it because it's fashionable, everybody's doing it? Well, let's talk about reality of how painful it is to go through this process. So in a normal career, you get on this escalator, you get good grades in school, you get into a good college, you get into a good company, you get regular promotions. In the US, you retire, you play golf, and you die. That's your career, right? Sounds about right? Well, in a startup, it looks like this, right? It seems like the success is overnight. But in reality, it looks something like this. That's what your startup experience will be like if you succeed. It's painful, it's confusing, and you have to be really good and used to living in chaos, living with uncertainty and being comfortable in it, right? So entrepreneurship is a mental disorder. Why would somebody want to do this to themselves? It's so painful, so confusing, right? But it takes a little bit of crazy to change the world. Everybody knows who this is, right? Okay, good. Just checking. So why are you doing it for yourself? What motivates you? Right, this is a motivational talk. So let's talk about motivation. Is it for the money? You can be rich with a startup. Probably not, right? How about the IPO money? You're going to take your company public, you're going to become a billionaire, it's going to be great. Well, guess what? Your odds of taking a company public are very, very, very low. Very low. So this number's changed a little bit. There's a few more. But tech IPOs, it's a very, very rare thing, and it takes mostly luck to get there all the way. Right? So the funded startup success rate, let's talk a little bit about that. Numbers, real numbers. So 30% of companies completely fail, go to zero. These are companies that have raised some kind of professional money. They will lose all their money, they go to zero, and they have to start over again. It might take a year, 2, 5, doesn't matter. 30% of them keep going for a while, but they're unprofitable, and Yahoo might come along and buy them these days, right? Buy the engineering team. 30% are somewhat profitable, they're doing okay, right? But still nothing too exciting, definitely won't IPO. And maybe 10%, if you're lucky, you'll be in that 10%, are considered a success, right? They return at least 5, 10 times more money than was invested in them. If somebody acquires them at a big premium, or they go all the way. So failure, and you've been told that failure is okay, and failure is great. Well, failure is not great. If you have a choice, do you want to succeed or do you want to fail? You probably want to succeed. But failure is a reality, right? Everybody know who this is? Beck? No? A little too old for you guys, right? So here are the odds, and they're against you, right? Odds are if you're doing something hard, if you're doing something, anything worth doing is not easy, right? And if you're doing something hard, chances are you will fail. It will not feel good, but you will learn something from it. So first-time founder, your chances of any kind of success, positive outcome, are about 18%. These are for funded companies that raise professional money. right? And most companies actually don't. If you failed before, the second time you're starting a new startup, your chances of success go up by 2%. Very exciting number. But if you've succeeded before, your chances almost double of success next time around. So you will learn a lot more from success than from failure. And my recommendation to anybody that wants to dive into the world of startups head first is go work for a fast-growing startup. You will learn more there in a year than in any business school or doing it on your own for 10 years. Okay? So you can learn on somebody else's mistakes. And if you're lucky and you're good, you'll get acquired. That's what you can shoot for. IPO is so rare. So are you doing it for freedom? You don't want a boss, right? You want to do it on your own? Well, in the normal job, you have one boss. Everybody know this movie? All right. Okay. Well, guess what? With a startup, every user is your boss. Every customer is your boss. So you will not have freedom. Do you have a family? Yeah? You want to have a family? Guess what? They will suffer. Just a fact. You're not going to spend any time at home. You're going to be always in a bad mood. More things go wrong than right. Just the way it is. So Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz said, as a startup CEO, I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 hours and cried. That's what you can expect in the startups. I'm telling you, it's very painful, right? So are you feeling defeated yet? Have I talked you out of doing startups yet? Yeah? No? Still motivated? Well, let's talk about, a little bit of morale, right? So as you go through this process, ups and downs, this emotional roller coaster, bad days and good days, you're always looking back to the previous day, and you might have a very bad day, and everybody's depressed, and your team's demotivated. But you always have to kind of take a look and see, okay, where were we a year ago? Where were we a month ago? And see if you made progress. And that should keep you motivated, right? There's a great post by Jess Lee on why startup founders are always unhappy, right? Always comparing today to yesterday. But you have to kind of look at the big picture and grow really thick skin. So, good news is, you can improve your odds if you're smart. I'll give you a few tips of how you should start in startups and not learn the hard lessons all by yourself, okay? So first of all, find a problem you can't live without solving. If anybody just wants to say, I'm going to go and start a startup, and then you're looking for something to do, that's not the right time. If you found a problem that you think you can solve, and you keep thinking about it, it keeps bothering you, and you keep thinking that, yes, I can solve this, I can do this, and it's just nagging at you, that's something worth doing, right? And engineers like to build technology and then try to make a product out of it. That's the wrong way to do it. The right way to do it is to look for a painful problem in the market and then build a technology that solves that problem. Okay? Not the other way around. So what is all this lean bullshit? You guys have heard of all this lean stuff. Had some workshops here, etc., right? It's very simple. Right? It's a lot of mumbo jumbo and a lot of technical jargon and all of this. Well, I'll give it to you very simply. What is being lean? It's about being quick, right? It's not about making big assumptions and then working for a year on a product and then getting it out and then nobody wants it. You just wasted a year. It's about making very small experiments and moving very quickly to test them. Right? It's very important. Right? So it gives you more chances to solve the problem. The more quick iterations you have, the more chances you have to solve the problem. You will never get it right the first time. You probably won't get it right the first 20 times. Right? You make assumptions, but usually they're wrong. So you have more chances to unfail if you're quick and you do small iterations and you experiment, you talk to your customers. So what's a good startup? Right? You all want to have a good startup, not a bad startup, right? Well, it's first things first. It's something that gets traction, right? I talked about this yesterday at the workshop as well. Is you want to sell out. You want to find something that people are talking about, they care about. It's a current wave, and you want to be part of it, and you want to grow fast with it, right? It's all about traction. It's not about building technology that nobody uses. It's about people using your product. That's the most important thing, right? And it solves a painful problem for a specific customer. Think about that. Always think about what problem is your product or your service solving, for whom, right? If you think about that first, it'll be much easier for you to design something that sells, not something that just takes up your time. So how can you be sure that you're solving a problem? Well, first of all, are people trying to solve this problem right now on their own? Are they doing things that are old, different, inefficient, and you can do it better? Right? It's very important that you are solving a problem and people are actually trying to solve it right now. Because if you come out and say, we have no competition, well, guess what? No competition means that there's probably no problem and you're not going to have a business. So that's the worst thing you can do when you talk to investors. Say, we have no competition. It means nobody really needs this thing that I'm building. They are not trying to solve this problem right now. So what do you do to validate all this? You stop coding, you get out of the building, you go talk to your customers as soon as possible, as frequently as possible. Especially for engineers out there, that's very hard to do. I'm going to build this little thing and then I'm going to show them and they're going to love it, but I don't want to talk to them. Right? You have to face your fears and you have to validate your assumptions. You have to do experiments and test and make sure that all of this works, that people want what you're building. How are you different and better? Not just different for the sake of being different, but different and noticeably, considerably better. And go after a big market. Go after a big market that's growing fast. The best way to build a big business is to get into a big industry that's growing very fast. You can become a leader in it, and it's easy because the whole industry is expanding. If not, then you have to do all the work on your own. Right? This is why venture capitalists like to invest in different cycles. There's different trends and patterns that happen every few years. So for example, right now, wearables are very hot. Right? If you were here yesterday, Shri was talking about wearables. And that's something very interesting right now. A lot of money is going in there. People are interested in it. It's a lot easier to get press, all of these things. So look for trends like that you can grow fast with. Right? And think about your business model. There are two types of business models. One is a symmetric business model. Very simple. You solve a customer's problem, they pay you, everybody's happy. This is your B2B software as a service. This is your e-commerce, etc. You sell somebody something, they pay for it, symmetric, right? Pretty easy to kind of understand how to build a business around that. Then there are asymmetric business models where somebody else pays for the customer experience. Facebook is the ultimate asymmetric business model. If you're not paying for it, you are the product, right? We're all the product. We're being sold to advertisers. And does it scale? That's the difference between a lifestyle business, which can be a restaurant, which can be a software consulting company or a marketing agency, and a product company that grows fast. So the scale here we're talking about is revenue per employee, right? So if you look at McDonald's, they make about $64,000 per employee, but they have 1.7 million employees. And you look at Craigslist on the opposite end, they make about $3.5 million per employee, but they only have 23 employees. You want to be somewhere in the middle. You want to be like Apple, you want to be like Google, Facebook, between 1 million and 2. Right? If you can do it. But you can also when you're creating projection, you talk to investors, don't say that you're going to be making $100 million per employee. That's the fastest way for them to realize you don't know what you're talking about. Right? You're going to outdo Apple. So this is what you want to shoot for, this kind of efficiency. You build a product once, you sell it 1 million times. Right? And don't forget you're building a repeatable business. You want to test, and when you start building a process around your product, you have to measure all the unit economics. How much does it cost me to get a user? How long do they stay? How much do they buy? How long do they stick around altogether? You have to measure everything. And the nice thing that many of you probably can't appreciate is that now we have internet-driven distribution models. is to get the word out about your new product is so much easier than it was 10, 15 years ago, right? And everybody complains, oh, it's so hard, we're not in Silicon Valley. Well, guess what? Anywhere in the world, it's a lot easier to start a startup now than it was in Silicon Valley 15 years ago. Because of this. Because it doesn't matter where you are. You can buy Google ads and target them to whatever region you target. You can buy Facebook ads. You can do a lot of things from anywhere. From a garage in Silicon Valley, from a garage in Vilnius. And focus on your team. Right? Most important thing in your startup, especially when you're first starting out, is your team. Right? So what's a good team? Right? And hiring is hard. What do you have to give versus a big company? Well, let's take a look. What you don't have is much money, usually. You don't have stability. You don't have support structure. You don't have a long-term plan. That's pretty hard to attract good employees when you can't offer them any of this, right? Well, what do you have? You have stock. You can give them a small portion of your dream, right? And if you can infect them with your passion, then it's a vision. But if you can't, it's a hallucination, right? If only you can see your vision, that's a hallucination. You can give them flexibility. They feel like working from 10 to midnight? Sure. Usually they're going to work 24/7 anyway, but it's flexible. They can work any 24 hours in a day. They choose. But the most important thing is you get to give them a chance to make a difference, right? That means that they can change an industry, they can change people's lives, they have a big influence on the product, they feel proud. It's something that they built. They're not a little cog, a little paper pusher in a big company that never sees the results of their work, but they get a chance to make a difference. And that's the most attractive thing about startups. And that's what you should emphasize when you're trying to hire somebody. When Steve Jobs was hiring the CEO that kicked him out in Apple, he said, do you want to change the world or do you want to keep selling sugar water? All right, this was the CEO of Pepsi before that. That's what he got him with. And that's what you can do when you hire people into your startup. Right? So what's a balanced startup team? First of all, you have to know your shit. What are you doing? You have to know your business. Right? You have to have domain expertise. You have to have insight into a particular problem, and you have to understand it better than the average other smart person. Right? This is something you have to start with. You have to understand the problem that you're trying to solve. Right? You have to be able to build product. You have to be able to engineer. Understand that when you're starting a startup, you're in the software business, maybe hardware business, maybe both. That means you need to be able to build product. You can't outsource your core competency. Your core competency is building the product and iterating on it very quickly. And design. I'm very biased. I'm a designer. I say design is first. But especially if you're doing something mobile, you have 15 seconds to convince the person that downloaded your app to open it for the second time. Do you think they're going to do that because you use some special database? No, they're going to do it because you gave them a good user experience. So it's very important to build that first, or design that user experience, and then build everything behind it to make it work. And what is your unfair advantage? You have to think about how are you going to compete? How are you going to go up against the biggest companies trying to solve this problem? And I'll give you a hint here. The competitive advantage here is not about being light, it's about being strong, right? Strong at something. And usually it's at special insight, and you have flexibility because you don't have a business built around some specific process. You get a chance to solve the problem fresh. Using the newest technology, the newest methods, everything that makes it a better solution than the previous generation. With every technology paradigm, you get a chance to solve all the business problems and consumer problems over and over and over again and do it better, faster, cheaper, more convenient. Think about your accomplishments. Have you raised money? That's a nice checkbox. Who did you raise money from? That's very important as well. Right? Did you create some partnerships? Because that's a very good signal in an industry that you're getting an industry's attention. Right? And always focus on growth. That's the most important thing. Do everything you can to grow the business. So let's take a real quick look at Silicon Valley versus European venture capital. And I'll tell you kind of dive into that real quick and we'll finish off with that. So in Silicon Valley, the first money you will raise will be either bootstrapped, it's your own money, or it's your friends, family, and fools. They believe in you, they know you, they trust you, they're investing in you, right? That's going to be your first money. Second money usually, or a lot of times, is accelerators. Right? You get in, you have some kind of a first product, you have some kind of traction, you get into an accelerator, you get lots of mentors to help out and get you to the next step. Next, you graduate out of that, you start raising some more serious amounts of money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million, etc. Right? These are from small venture capitalists and angels, business angels. Right? Then you have bigger 100 million plus VC funds. Few people see money from those guys. And then you have growth equity, which is, investing hundreds of millions. And then, if you're lucky, your exit is being acquired or IPO, right? And we talked about the odds of that happening are pretty low. Well, in Europe, it's a little bit different. You have very little bootstrap or friends and family money, especially Eastern Europe, right? People don't have as much savings. You have a lot of accelerators. There's about 150 accelerators in Europe of various different qualities. There's a few good ones, and there's about 139 not so good ones. You have very few angels. That's a big problem for Europe, and this is what we're trying to solve, because these companies are graduating, they might be good, but they're not getting that next support, right? And there's plenty of 100 million plus VC funds, growth equity, and then M&A and IPO. Well, usually these companies go away to the US. Right? That's kind of a problem for Europe overall. So during the 2001 dot-com crash, most of you don't remember it. I remember it fondly. You had all the US VC funds run away from Europe. And in Europe, only about 6 VC funds survived. So just now, things are gathering steam. But it's very interesting what's happening. Right? And in that time, the world has changed. You've all seen this picture, I'm sure. This is the Pope, 2005 versus 2013. The world has become mobile. And the large funds, the large venture funds, all of that's outdated because it predates. It's much easier to create a company now, right? In the last decade. You can't fully appreciate it if you haven't done both sides, but now it's so easy to get started. In 5 minutes, you can have web hosting, you can start building your product, you can start advertising it, you have various different distribution models, and it's really cheap. It costs almost nothing, right? Where before, you have to invest millions just to get started. So for Europe, it's a little bit weird right now, what's going on with investors. And it's not very good for them, but you're going to see a lot of interesting things happen. And yesterday's seed capital is today's Series A and B. So it's a lot less money to start a company is needed. That's good for you, and there are a lot more companies getting started because of that. And when, 15 years ago, there were a lot of IPOs, companies would go public very quickly. Today, they usually get acquired. So it's less money to get started, and the exits are smaller, but they're a lot more frequent. Right? So your chances of success are improving. Majority of sales, company sales, are between 10 and 80 million. You're going to read on TechCrunch about these companies that sold for $19 billion or $1 billion, this or that. Most companies sell in a small range, 10 to 80 million, which is actually a lot of money, by the way, for most people. But that's where it's at. And even Y Combinator, I'm sure you all know Y Combinator, right? They're very successful. But their average exit, their median exit is $20 million. Right? Even the best accelerator in the world that gets the best companies. Dropbox, Airbnb came out of that, if you don't know. Right? So why here and why now? Why is Europe interesting? Why should you stay here and be excited about creating a startup in Europe and not just try to run away to Silicon Valley? So what's called multiples, meaning the amount of money that comes in and comes out in Europe is higher because it's cheaper to do a startup here. Right? European exits are about 25% smaller, but the entrances, the valuations to get started with a company for an investor is 3 to 4 times lower. And investors know this, and it's very interesting. You're going to see a lot more investors being active in Europe. Right? So Europe produces half as many exits as the US, 1/3 of the big 100 million plus, but only on 20% of the money. That's pretty amazing, right? It's very expensive to be in Silicon Valley, right? So for investors in US, on average, if it's a big exit, they'll get about 4.5 times their money. But in Europe, it's almost double. That's very exciting for investors. That's why you're going to see a lot more investment in Europe, right? So brace yourselves, European investors are coming. Right? You should be excited about that. There's going to be a lot more money, a lot more fuel for you to create your startups, a lot more support. So the future is bright for European startups, so invest in sunglasses. All right, so I'll give you the slides if you want. You can follow me on Twitter. And I'll give you a present as well. One more thing. So you can go to founderco.com, download the first free chapter of my book that's coming next year. Hope you enjoy it. Would love the feedback. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitaly.
So how did it go? The first talk of the day?
I don't know. You tell me.
Guys, how did it go? I think it went well.
I think he just increased the new startups ratio in this room.